You're listening to the Rosenfeld Review. Lou Rosenfeld here. I am very pleased to be joined today by Kate Towsey. Kate, hello.
Hello. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. It's been an interesting few years. We go way back to your participation in some of the early Design Ops summits back 2017, 18, 19,
Mm-hmm.
where you were teaching workshops on research operations, and you were just getting, maybe not getting going in research operations, but really starting to be a prime mover and shaker in getting that concept out there. You started the ResearchOps Slack community, and then you moved on to the Cha-Cha Club, which maybe we'll talk about in a little bit. You taught workshops. You've really been a leader in the space. You even coined one of my favorite terms along the way, powder, people who do research.
Which I love that it's turned into powder, because that wasn't mine originally.
It was powder?
Yeah, so I always I coined the phrase "people who do research," and then I coined PWDR, and somewhere along the way, somebody has turned it into powder, which I love.
I'm tempted to make a stupid joke about those powder heads, but I just did, so I'll leave it at that. Yes, and you've been consulting in this space for years. You've, as I say, you've been a mover and shaker, and you've written a book.
Yeah,
Research
finally.
That Scales, that we are publishing like in a few weeks, and I'm very excited by that. It's the Research That Scales, the Research Operations Handbook, and we need a handbook, although it's not overly long, but it's long enough that it's almost, well, I guess I got small hands. Maybe that's the problem.
And I'm told that it's dense with information, but thankfully I've managed to make it easily digestible as well.
Well,
And
I
feel that, I feel,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And I often think, welcome to my brain. That's what it's like in there. It's full of detail. It's dense. It takes me a long time to work through the information, but it hopefully comes out in a way that's really understandable.
Well, I mean, it is a magnum opus, and I mean that in the most positive way. That term gets overused, but I want to at least, you and I have opinions about it, and we're biased, but the August book review source, independent source, Kirkus, we just got the review from them. I think it was yesterday, and the summary is, and I quote from Kirkus, "A highly specialized reference tool that packs an impressive amount of information while remaining approachable." And I think that that nails it on the head. There is a lot here, and we're going to get into a bit about what you're covering in Research That Scales, but let's rewind just a little bit. At some point, you must have had some aha moment where you realized that there was a need for a thing, whether you thought it was called research operations out of the gate, or whatever you might have termed it. Can you take us back to that moment?
Yeah. I was working as a content strategist in London, and Lisa Reichelt, she was contracting at the Government Digital Service at the time in the UK. And I've always thought that GDS at that point was like Woodstock. It was going to happen for a short amount of time. You would know when the buses and the hippies and the LSD pulled out of town.
And Lisa Reichelt was like Carlos Santana's. She was
yeah, exactly.
That was her role at GDS, yes.
So she asked me to come and use my content strategy skills to help 40 plus researchers across government find the research that they were creating. Amazing research and the most incredible researchers. But of course, typical, the story that many organizations have, a lot of amazing research being produced, but then where does it go after that? So she surmised, I could bring in my content strategy skills and organize it for them, understand what kinds of information are they producing, where should we store it, what should we do? And I got in there and had a look at this and realized, and this is pertinent to the knowledge management chapter in my book. It's really the genesis of a lot of my thinking about that chapter, which is called Long Live Research Knowledge. and which I love because it's got a bit of a is it Star Wars theme to it? The sci-fi people are going to hate me for even questioning that. But I realized a little bit into this contract that I had no idea what I was doing. I was a content strategist that I worked in CMSs, I worked on tone of voice, I worked on messaging, a lot of the things that I enjoy doing as part of my community management roles. But I was not a librarian by any stretch of the imagination. So as a contractor, you make yourself useful. Doesn't matter what you find there, you make yourself useful. And so I started building a research lab. Lisa was part of her really fantastic strategy at GDS. And she looked at me and said, could you build a lab? And I come from a musical background. I've been in bands and things. And I've also been a radio producer in my early past. And so I thought, this is great. I love audio technology. And I built a lab and enjoyed every moment of it. I worked with some really fantastic specialists in building the space. And Lisa and I started the GDS research blog, which I was very happy editing and doing that sort of content curatorial side of things. Then I eventually got into producing a research panel, a very large research panel tool. This was long before there were amazing tools like Rally, Great Question, Use Interviews, and et al., Askable, and so on. Long before there were these specialist tools. And so I was working with Sugar CRM and kind of hacking this thing into shape. I think it's still being used to this day, the system.
At GDS?
At GDS, yeah, or across government, in fact. I built it so that it could be adopted by government departments as they wanted. And so at some point, I thought, surely other people are doing this kind of work. And I started writing about it on the GDS user research blog. And people started reaching out to me from Etsy or from Adobe. I'm sort of picking up some names here. And after a couple of years, in fact, of having many of these conversations with people, I thought, there is something in here. And then someone I knew said to me, because I had this job title I didn't really like for this contract. It was something like user research strategic support. I think that was actually what it was. And I was quite a senior consultant, so I took affront to the support word in my job title. And someone said to me, actually, they're doing these kinds of things already in a very formalized way at Salesforce, at Airbnb, at Microsoft, at Facebook, at Apple, at all the really big companies. And they call it research operations, just like you get design ops, they've got research ops. And so contrary to popular belief, I did not invent research operations. I just did a very, very good job of marketing it. And I'm pleased to say that, in alignment, when I started the research ops community, saw the opportunity to bring a group of amazing people together and kind of get something going to really discover what is this thing? What do researchers need us to operationalize? And of course, with the work of democratization, it's extended well beyond just operationalizing for researchers. Now I see that you're really operationalizing for the entire organization to learn. So that's really the kind of genesis of where it started, and that's an aha moment for me where I thought, there is this thing that many people aren't doing, and yet these big companies who are really forward thinking, they are doing it, and for some reason nobody else knows. And there's no framework around it. I also looked at DevOps and design ops quite briefly at that point and thought they don't seem to have a really solid framework around what they're doing. And that's where the hashtag What is Research Ops program come out of, which very briefly for the listeners who maybe haven't come across that, it was, forget the exact numbers, but we organized a global movement. And I've lived in many countries around the world, Africa and India and England and now Australia. And so it was really important for me. It wasn't just a Euro-US centric movement. It needed to include everywhere. And so we had something like 37 workshops around the world with dozens and dozens of researchers defining for themselves, what does research operations mean? What does it need to look after?
It's interesting. The Research Operations Handbook is coming out just a couple months ahead of the Design Operations Handbook, which is actually, that's the subtitle. The main title is the Design Conductors by Rachel Posman and John Calhoun. And we're putting that one out too. And, it's just so interesting to me. These terms, research ops, design ops, have been around for a while now. I mean, a while in our world, 7 years, 8 years is a long time, and yet it's taken a while to create and encapsulate and capture these frameworks, this vocabulary. You have a whole bunch of really of frameworks, I'd say is probably the best word, in the book that have come together. And I know you've been talking about things like the 8 pillars of research operations, probably for as long as I've known you, but it's taken a long time to put it together. And I really salute you for that. And you probably could have run out ahead and just written something and said, this is it. But you, I think what you've done here is, as you said, you were really involved in this series of dozens and dozens of workshops globally to really define what research operations is and could be. And that's influenced what you've done here. So you've really kind of facilitated a global conversation before you did the writing. And I guess that makes you a good researcher.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And actually, just a correction, it was Emma Bolton who came up originally with her 8 pillars.
That's right.
And she used she did a lot of, we ran the workshops. We got a lot of sort of qualitative data from that, but we also, she had put together a survey, and that brought in a whole lot of quant data, which she then analyzed, and she came up with the 8 pillars. I mean, it's so long ago now, who knows who did what, but that was really her sort of next step, that sort of next digestion of that data. And then when I was working in the book, I actually came up with 8 elements, and they're slightly different to hers because I come from she's a research leader, and seeing it from the research leader's perspective, which is not wrong. And I'm speaking more from an operational point of view. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that needs to happen in order for research to happen, but it's not necessarily visible to a research leader. So there are one example is money and metrics. How do you set yourself up to be able to draw money into research for good purpose? How do you manage it really well so that you can get more, but also so you can make the most of what you do get? That's really so important. It's so often overlooked. And then how do you actually, oftentimes when you're spending money, it's generating other numbers aside from the fiscal numbers. It's generating like numbers of people doing recruitment or numbers of participants. How do you use all of that to leverage, to show your impact so that you can say, hey, we're not just kind of actually like exchanging money between people. We're actually delivering something really valuable for this. And then using those metrics to now get more money to do even bigger, better things. So there's aspects like that as far as I recall, she doesn't include in the 8 pillars, but are so fundamental.
Well, and I think you're giving a good flavor of what's in the book, digging deeply into a metrics level, into a resource level. Really important with research, obviously, when it's often, unfortunately, seen as a pure cost center. We've already touched on knowledge management and the concept of repositories. But I think one of the things that you find very important, and maybe there's a chicken and egg thing here, but the relationship of research operations to research strategy. And I'd love to dig into that a little bit. We'll do that after the break. Everyone, we're talking with Kate Towsey, author of Research That Scales, the Research Operations Handbook. It's great to be talking with you, Kate. We'll be right back. I'm going to give you 5 reasons you should be using the Rosenverse. First one, where else are you going to find 100 events that you can attend for free every year, 2 a week, about product management, product design, and UX design, plus a highly engaged Slack-based community of over 13,000 of your peers. What else are you going to find in the Rosenverse? You'll find hundreds and hundreds of recordings of conference presentations and community session recordings, all in one place from a single search browse interface. And behind those hundreds of recordings are hundreds of experts, people who have advanced the field, people who are your peers who are doing interesting new things, all in one place. Why else should you use the Rosenverse? We've been advancing the field of UX since 2005. You're going to find the most advanced content on such topics as design operations and program management, UX research, and a host of other topics from climate UX to civic design to how designers can work better in product organizations. Lastly, you've been trusting our content since we started back in 2005. Whether it's our books, our conferences, our community sessions, well, we think you're going to trust the way we've brought those all together so that you can spend less time searching and browsing and more time learning and benefiting. I hope you'll try out the Rosenverse, and I hope you'll consider upgrading to a gold paid membership because it brings you a lot more. Not only do you have access to hundreds and hundreds of recorded conference presentations, but you also get access to the Rosenbot, which is a ChatGPT 4 level chatbot that we've been training on all of our content, including our growing collection of nearly 60 books and counting. It's all there, it's all great content, and the Rosenbot is a cutting-edge way to get at it. You can try the gold membership out with a trial for 2 weeks. Give it a try. Hope you like it. Welcome back to the Rosenfeld Review. Hope you had a great break. I'm here with Kate Towsey. We're talking about Research That Scales, the Research Operations Handbook, of which I believe I'm the only person on earth who has a copy. I don't think Kate has one yet.
I think Marta, our editor, she has a copy.
Oh, maybe Marta has one.
She emailed me the other day and she said it looks fantastic.
It does. And more importantly, it reads fantastic thanks to you and obviously to Marta's work as well. Just before the break, we were talking about the relationship of research operations and research strategy. And it would almost be fair, correct me if I'm wrong, to say this book is almost as much about the strategy as it is about the operations, because I don't know if you can keep them separate. What do you think?
I feel like we have to have strategy to get through our lives. You got to know where you're going, what you're doing, why, what values are going to bring to you to do this thing. And I simply don't think you can design systems without having a strategy in place. Certainly not a successful system. And really, research operations, one of my biggest messages in general one of my biggest goals for this year is to make sure that we can continue to shift the notion that research operations is administrative help. In academia, there is a research assistant, and research assistants assist researchers. And not to be patronizing, but that is what they do. And so they come in and they're like a personal assistant for researchers, and they'll do recruiting and they'll do procurement and all the administration behind getting research done. And it's very often confused that research operations is one research assistant or a collection of research assistants, but research ops is not a synonym for research assistants. What research operations is designing all the systems that are required, like we have with our civic services it doesn't matter where you live. When you walk out of your home door, you will bump into a street with a traffic light probably. You probably have had the garbage collectors come by. If not yesterday, they'll be coming by in the next few days, hopefully. You'll have electricity cables above you, and so on and so forth. When you want to get somewhere, you can have multiple choices of how to get there. And it's all those systems that are enabling you to commute around the city to get on with your day. And that is what research operations do. We design all of the systems that enable people of all types to commute the research landscape. Now, you can't design a city very well, at least, if you don't have some type of strategy around how it's going to work. Are we going to put in trains, or is it better to have the underground, or do we create bicycle paths? All the sorts of things that as we as citizens will be voting for. We vote for someone who says they're going to do something that we want. It's the same sort of decisions that a research operations person is making. So it is highly important for research operations, even at that level, to have some kind of overview of what kind of culture you're going to create, what kind of environment you're going to create for people to live in so that they are able to produce amazing, rich knowledge as researchers or as people who do research, or are going to be able to absorb that amazing knowledge because they come across it, it's in a format they like and understand. And so I really feel like, as the side note to strategy, that really when we kind of step away from the word of research a little bit and understand it purely as learning of creation of knowledge, of storing of knowledge so that it can be reused and then enabling people to learn, that we really are like a learning operations function. And if you can step back and kind of take that view, suddenly the world opens up. And now it's not just about recruiting, which is not it's a massive, massive important job, but it's about so much more, and your audience and your customer, as research operations are so much more. The other reason do you want to jump in there, Lou?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So the other reasons the strategy is so important is because there is so much that you could do, so much. I mean, at Atlassian, I had a 10-person team, and we didn't even touch sides of all the things that we could have been doing. I know other teams, Amazon, I think, a 20-person team, at least in one part of the organization, probably not touching sides. There is so much you can do. If you don't have a strategy, what do you do first, second, and third? So the trick is, and Lou, you and I spoke about this in the notes before we started recording, in 2018 and 2019, when I was at Design Ops Summit in New York. And the book opens with the story, teaching a workshop to 50 research leaders from predominantly America, but across the world. And I remember it was an incredible moment for me because it was up in the Goldman Sachs building. I forget what floor now, but high enough that I could look across. Is it the Hudson where you can see
It's a
the
beautiful
statue?
view of the Hudson and lower New York Harbor. Yeah.
Totally. And I thought, my gosh, I've really made it. Somehow I've managed to get myself into this amazing place of being in New York and teaching this amazing workshop. And it was called Designing a Research Operations Strategy. And I hadn't clocked at that point just how there isn't a strength in research strategy. And so I'd asked my attendees in both years and even more recently in a workshop in London to come armed with their research strategy. What are you doing and not doing as a research team? Where are you putting researchers? What structure are they in? Those kinds of questions. What sort of research are you doing over other types of research? And people came and they were very confused about what I meant by a research strategy. Now, the problem is that you can only set out operations when you know what you're setting out operations for. You can't just deliver recruiting. You can try, and you can certainly procure one of the amazing tools I mentioned earlier. You can procure one of those and you can do some pretty cool things these days. But you can get so much more power out of your effort and your buck if you go, actually, the thing that our CEOs care about is this particular cohort of customers. These particular groups of people are super important. And they are, let's go with an example, people who are living with a disability. They've got very particular needs in terms of their recruiting experience, not because they have disabilities, but because they're a certain community of people. You could say the same thing for CEOs are really, really interested in VIP shoppers. They also have they're going to have particular requirements in terms of the kinds of communications, how you reach out to them, where they live. And so you can set up recruiting in completely different ways, but you can only do that and have that kind of power and really be targeted with your resourcing if you know that that's where you're going to put your effort, which requires a research strategy. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And as you're going through this, I start thinking about your former colleague, Lisa Reichelt, from both GDS and Atlassian, as one of the first people I know who had a job title involving the word insight. And I'm wondering if you see the rise of insight as sort of a way to square research with strategy, or to make research appear more strategic. That may sound a little uncharitable, because actually I love the term insight, but this idea of organizations that are informed and sort of being at the core of a research strategy is really less about them benefiting from research and more about them, I think, benefiting from insight. So that's my roundabout way of asking you, does that term have any special value in this context?
I Lou, you and I were speaking about the fact that you've written your book and slowly you start to forget what's in it. But I do recall having right in the beginning, there is a fantastic quote from an agency in New Zealand. I forget their exact name now, Future something. I mean, you would think I'd remember considering I've read it a million times. And they have this beautiful description or definition of insight, which is it's really about an inward understanding. And so I love the word research. I think research and insight, I've not thought about it until now, until you've brought it up. But research could be about that verb, that activity of going out and actually excavating the knowledge. And then the insight part is how do you enable people to actually have that inward sight of the topic at hand? Because it's only with inward sight that someone can actually make a decision to do something, which ultimately is that someone making a decision to do something is what makes something happen in the world, which gives the results that can be measured. And so it really is that secondary part of how do we get people to have that inward sight about something so that we can actually have results. Otherwise, it's just really well done research.
Insight.
So I think it's
got it.
Insight's a really good word.
Inward
but,
sight.
What's that?
Inward sight. Insight's just short for I got it. By the way, the company is We Create Futures.
We Create Futures. That's right. Yeah.
In New Zealand. So, well, we've been talking about research operations, both at a highly strategic level, and really, I think, through the lens primarily of people who would see themselves as user researchers or the more modern parlance UX researchers. And your book offers so much to those folks, whether they're doing operations explicitly. I mean, there's really no one, I think, who's a professional researcher who is just completely, these days, totally disconnected from the operational aspects, especially, I mean, if they are, they probably won't be around much longer in those jobs. But that's another conversation. But I'd like to spend a couple minutes before we wrap up talking about what the book offers to other people, like, for example, let's take it a little further away from sort of the traditional qualitative research folks, maybe toward the quant or to the data science and market researchers. Is there something for them here? Is there something for people who do research? Those ones who don't necessarily see themselves as researchers, but should they be reading the book too?
Absolutely. So right at the beginning of the day, I first started writing this book in 2020. Had no idea it would take me quite so long to really kind of dig through it all and try and understand how do I do what I do and how do I think about what I do and how can I communicate in a way that it's easy for others to understand. And I ended up dropping the word, for the most part, user research, and I certainly don't think I've used UX research anywhere. And instead went with a research practice. Because really, everything that is in the book is fundamental to human-centered research. And so it doesn't matter whether you work in an academic context. Even I've got friends who are working in medical space, and they're doing human-centered research all the time, and they're really interested in the book. People working in universities are really interested in how do they set up their research practices. And because the book covers the fundamentals of how do we have a strategy so that we understand what we're doing first, second, and third, and where we're going to be able to deliver the most value to the organization so that we can kind of outlive the tough times and thrive during the really great times. But then specifically looking at like tooling, how do you procure the right tools? How do you think about tooling as systems so that they're not siloed entities? How do you look after participants' data? Not just here are the rules of of this particular regulation, but how do you think about privacy and respect in research? Again, relevant to all kinds of human research. And I could go on. How do you look after knowledge? How do you think about knowledge? And so, how do you attract money? We spoke about that earlier. And so the book goes through all of these things that are going to be relevant to market researchers, relevant to UX designers, researchers who are doing some operations on the side, they might be a little overwhelmed by it. If you're one of those people, you might read my book and go, oh my gosh, I don't think I can get this all done as a side hustle. That's okay. You get together a bit of a strategy and you pick up the little pieces that you can do and you step further forward than you were last week. And so I specifically chose research practice so that when you're reading the book, you're not feeling alienated by the fact that you're constantly seeing a term that actually doesn't relate to your space.
Well, I think that's really important because one of the things that I've learned as I moved out of, sort of the tail end of my own consulting career, and certainly as I've been exposed to so many interesting, brilliant people's ideas through my role as a publisher, is that research is truly, it's a mosaic. It's so many different perspectives and thoughts on getting at truth and, or at reality. And there's so many different tools and so many different practices. And what a book should do, and what I think your book does, is it provides not only frameworks, but a common vocabulary and a lot of definitions of those terms so that the people who read the book, regardless of where they come from, can have a productive conversation around research. So thank you for that gift, Kate. Your book, I think, is going to make a real difference for so many people, whether they see themselves as researchers, whatever variety that is, or they don't, but they do it nonetheless.
Yeah. My hope and the way I wrote it, I rewrote it almost completely about a year ago, is that it offers, you read it once and within your mind is imprinted a way of thinking about it so that you don't need to keep referencing back to this detail and that detail, but you just have a way to think. It literally gives you an operational muscle that you didn't have before. And so you might reference back, but my hope is that you read it once and you're just reprogrammed to be able to think operationally.
Well, that's one great gift, a huge gift, and I hope people will consider picking up a copy of Research That Scales. The other gift is in fine Rosenfeld Review tradition. What did you bring today for our listeners? What's a piece of a book, a piece of advice? What do you got for us?
My advice, and it's quite fun advice, is there is operations happening everywhere around you. And one of my favorite places to go and learn about operations and be inspired by other types of operational, like artistry really, is to go to a restaurant. There's one in Sydney called Nomad. If you're ever in town, go and do this there.
You'll take me.
And yeah, I will take you. Yeah, absolutely. When you hear next, that's a deal. And go and sit at the bar, and usually it'll be a bar with an open kitchen, and you can sit and watch how the chefs are working in the kitchen. And you'll notice, if you're watching closely enough, that there'll be a certain design to the kitchen. Those cupboards and drawers and bits and pieces aren't there by mistake. If anyone has watched a series called The Bear recently,
just going to bring it up.
You would have seen him measuring the seconds between one part of the kitchen and the other. And so there's a system behind the architecture of the kitchen. And then you'll see that there'll be certain plates that they'll make a certain number of before someone comes along and makes an extra one. And if you sit and watch long enough, you will be able to spot countless patterns in how that kitchen runs. And really, it's just an analogy for research operations. All you're doing is you're looking at the systems, the architecture, the culture. Is it a shouty kitchen? Probably not if it's an open one. Do they have a spare kitchen behind where they're cooking the shouty dishes, where people are shouting at one another? And so really, it's such an inspiration for being able to have a fresh and inspiring view on the work. If you are a research operations specialist, on the work that you do, can be very refreshing. Might give you some surprising ideas about how you manage your knowledge or your recruiting or the entire system of research. So that's my gift to you. Take yourself out to a dinner and have a fantastic meal.
I love that idea. And I'm a counter denizen anyway, so you don't have to convince me. But yes, it's actually dinner time here in New York. And you've inspired me. Thank you for that. Thank you for the book. Everyone, it's been great to I hope you've enjoyed the podcast, and I hope that Research That Scales is on your radar. Kate, lovely to talk with you.
Likewise. So good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Hey, it's Lou. Thank you for listening to the latest Rosenfeld Review podcast. I really appreciate it. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to pop me an email, lou@rosenfeldmedia.com. Tell me what you thought. Better yet, leave me the hell alone and post a review on your favorite podcast platform. Please feed the algorithm. It really does make a difference. We want to get the word out. If you like the word, give us a hand. And while I'm asking you for favors, don't forget, buy books. Support your favorite local independent publisher. We happen to be one, rosenfeldmedia.com. All those great UX books are there. So, thanks again.